Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Guest for today is Noah Martins. He has opened for Azim Bantwala and he has also done comedy for LVC, Las Vegas Comedy. He's done for Comedy Club Manipal and also Kalakari Revolution. So Noah, how excited are you to be in this podcast? How do you feel?
It's my first technical interview sort of thingy, so I'm pretty excited. Let's do this.
Okay. So basically, is there like a connection between engineering and comedy? Every famous stand-up comedian is actually an engineer in the past or something, and you're studying engineering. So
Depression. That's the connection between engineering and comedy. Uh, I mean, I think there's something technical about writing a joke at some point. I mean, the first.
so there's like
It's an art. It's a skill. So it's the same. It's like designing something. So I guess that because engineers think that way, because engineers think about how to solve problems. When you have a premise, you want to build it into something. So you have to look at it from all different sorts of angles, and yeah. So that's probably the connection between
but
engineers.
like most of the engineers, like after leaving their jobs and getting that stress. So
Yeah,
what do you-
right. I don't know, man. I just discovered comedy when I was younger, and I loved it. I actually discovered it because I used to play basketball. So yeah, I'll get there. So I used to play basketball, and I used to watch basketball videos online, like NBA videos, just general NBA videos, and then I came across this one video with Kevin Hart in it. I didn't know who Kevin Hart was at the time. Okay, this was like 2011, I think, and he was just sitting at a table and talking to some news reporter guys about basketball. So I mean, he wasn't trying to be funny. He was just talking, like they were just talking about the game. And I saw it, and I was like, oh, this is a basketball player talking about basketball, right? And then like a few weeks later, I went for a movie, and there was a poster of a Kevin Hart movie. I was like, hey, this basketball player does movies also. But then I came home and I googled him, and then I watched his specials, all three of them that were out at the time, and it was amazing, man. That's how I figured out stand up was a thing, and the Indian scene was just starting
yeah,
to kick off. around
AID
then.
started in 2013.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
they got it in.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So the scene in India was just starting to kick off then. So I've been following the Indian comedy
That's
scene
a,
since
but
like the
why
very
did you
start.
decide? Like, why did you decide? That's how you got into. But why did you
Why
want to
did,
get into
did I
comedy?
decide to actually start doing it?
Yeah.
Well, I always liked doing it, and like in the ninth standard and 10th standard, I would do comedy in front of my class, but it wouldn't be my own stuff. I was very open about the fact that it wasn't my own stuff. Like I'd do other people's jokes basically. I'd watch a comedy video and then I'd recreate it. That's plagiarism. I mean, if I pretended like it was my own thing, that would be plagiarism. And but I didn't. And that plagiarism is the highest crime in comedy. Anyways, so I would do that, and I just loved it. I loved the instant gratification that you get. You say something and you immediately get
The
laugh.
applause.
Yeah, and it's just the idea of making people laugh is something that I like. So that's how I got into that. But my first actual writing my own stand up was when I was in the 12th standard. I was preparing for JE mains and advanced and BitSat and all of that sort of thing. And there was this stand up competition that I heard about. And one of my friends was like, hey, we should take part. And at the time, I had a button phone.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that was
It was on your
yeah,
YouTube channel also, yeah.
So the video that I put on my YouTube channel is me auditioning for that stand up competition. So it was the jokes about the button phone just came so naturally because
You've
it's
been
something
through that.
Yeah, exactly.
You
It's
felt
something
it.
I related to so strongly that it was easy to write those jokes, and I did pretty well at that stand up competition. And then I put it on YouTube, and people actually liked it. So
So, but
it was
so that's how
like,
jokes work actually. Like, and that's how people create their jokes when they relate to something, or
I mean,
is
I
it
think that
brainstorming
all
or
jokes
something?
should be something that you relate to, and something you should be talking about things that mean something to you. I have a process for joke writing. Every time I think of anything remotely funny, I put it down on my phone. I have like a notes tab in my phone with all of my joke ideas. They're just ideas. They're not really full jokes, and I just leave it there. I don't.
And then you upgrade them. You work it on
No,
them.
that's not. I just put the concept there, and I forget about it. And a few months later, if there's an open mic and I have to write material for the open mic, I go back to the notes and I look through those ideas. And if I still find them funny, like a few weeks later, a few months later, then they're probably actually funny, and they weren't just funny in that moment. So then I think about it, then I develop it, and then I just go. I actually don't even write it. I just think about what I'm going to do, and then I go on stage and I do some version of it. And the first time it's usually not that good, but I get a feel for where the punches are and what people find funny.
So you actually like go with the flow.
I go with the flow the first time I do the joke, but by the time I do it the second time, I've more or less understood how people react to this joke.
But has it ever happened like you're while performing on a show, you're doing it and then you find that the audience is not liking the joke, so you decide you scratch it out completely while performing? Have you done that?
Well, in the past, I've not been yeah, there have been points where I've been doing a joke and it's not being working, so I just move on to the next joke.
So you just leave that, skip that part, like. Oh.
I mean, it's not like you just stop in the middle, but like you build it into a transition. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that is something that happens.
Have you like dealt with negative comments, like people saying?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
because anything, if you start anything new, you always face some negative
comments. I agree, for sure. Like, I mean, it's not always hate. It's a lot of time it's positive criticism. For the second video I posted on YouTube, I got a lot of comments saying I move around a lot, and I did notice that it was kind of irritating to watch someone moving around. So now I hold on to the mic when I perform, just like to anchor me, sort of. So, and it looks cool also. It looks very professional to just hold on to the mic. But yeah, that is. There's a lot of, some of it is just random hate, but I don't care about that. Like, I've taught myself to not even think about it at all, just to treat it as what it is, which is just trash comments that I don't even need
so you just don't think about it?
No, I don't let it affect me. It's just someone on the internet who doesn't.
But what would be your advice to someone how did you reach that stage of not letting it affect you?
I mean, I guess if you do let it affect you, you're just going down this rabbit hole that of just letting every tiny thing affect you, and then you're not going to end up doing anything. So once you realize that you need to focus on your art and making yourself better, and if you really believe in something, then the hate, just you shouldn't let it get to you. It's something that you have to work on. It's not something that comes immediately. You have to train yourself to not give a shit.
So you need to work on your mind then.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually have a friend like you who, in 10th standard used to use other people's jokes. I have his friend, shout out to Ved Nagar Shekhar.
Okay.
So what he does is he actually copies other people's jokes and he performs in front of class just like you.
Okay.
And then some days like, okay, one day let's get into, I'll do an open mic and all that stuff.
But I'm very open about the fact that those were other people's jokes. I didn't say at that time. Plagiarism is like the biggest crime in comedy. So I would never copy a joke now. And if I see someone copy a joke and pretend like it's their own, I mean, if it's a comedian, I'd lose respect for that comedian completely. So don't do that. Like, if you're doing an open mic, write your own jokes. Otherwise, just don't do the open mic. The hardest part about it is writing it. Performing it is something that it's a skill that you develop over a period of time, but writing it, every time you write it, it's a challenge. It's like, I don't even know if you write the jokes. It's like the jokes exist and you catch them. Like, the jokes just exist in the universe, and you're like, you harness them. I don't know, something like that. So just write your own jokes if you're doing an open mic. Don't do an open mic with someone else's show.
But how do you like manage academics? You're studying engineering right now in BITS Pilani.
At BITS, yes.
Which is very tough. How do you do both of it? Plus you have your own podcast.
I do have my own podcast. I mean, I'm not doing particularly well at academics right now, but I think that's just because it is BITS and it's hard. But I mean, I give separate time to comedy and academics. It's definitely you definitely compromise on it, but I don't know if I'm meant to be an engineer. Sort of. I did it because I like putting myself
into challenging
into challenging things that I don't know that I'm going to succeed at. It just gives me a rush. That's why
That's why stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why engineering also. But engineering is proving to be more of a hustle than I thought it would be. So it does take a hit because of stand-up sometimes. But I mean, I do find a way to balance it. I give studies and stand-up separate time. I usually think about jokes and stuff like that just when I'm going to sleep or just before open mics and things
Ever
like that.
happened in class when you're looking at the professor and then you're
And I
like,
think of something funny for sure. I just put it in my notes. That's my entire process. Put in your notes, get back to it a few months later, and then see what happens from there.
but did you ever like think about it that if you were not studying engineering, you would have been better at stand-up comedy or bigger or something? Have you had that thought?
Sure, I would have been, but I don't think I'm ever going to just do stand up. I do stand up because I love doing it, and I don't plan on ever stopping to do it. But I don't think it'll ever be the only thing that I do. I do plan on doing some. I assume that I'd always be doing something else in stand up on the side. I stand up is not. I don't think right now, at least, that
It's
gonna
like a
be
proper career.
yeah, I don't think for me it's going to be a proper career. Even the podcast, I do it because I love doing it. It gives me a chance to meet really interesting people, and then we get to work on things together. Sometimes I become friends with all these people who are doing really cool shit. So
Plus, you get a way to connect with them. If you're just randomly like, oh, I'm a fan, I want to
Exactly.
connect with you, then
Yeah.
there's no reason. They'll be
Yeah.
like, okay, we don't have time. But
I
if
hung
you
out with
give
Sumayuki
it
a lot after that, and I got to see his entire process. And I don't agree with all the things that he says and stuff like that, but his process was very interesting. I got to see how much effort he actually puts into what he does, and like he's reached a position where that nobody else has in the Goan scene right now, and that's something that's quite respectable. Even Maicha Kaza, we worked with them. I worked with them a lot after that. We might actually be starting a new venture now, something that I'm quite excited about. I can't talk about it much.
Oh, I was going to ask you, you
but,
want to tell about it a bit?
But
Maybe a hint?
maybe a little later. But it's so I would never have had that relationship with them if we hadn't done the podcast together. And they're really cool guys. And so the entire idea of the podcast is to talk to interesting people and to even talk to people that I disagree with sometimes. Because I don't think like the entire culture right now is if you disagree with someone, you shut them out. You decide you're not going to talk to them.
Yeah, that's
hey,
what
this guy's
happens,
racist. This guy's insulting. I'm just not going to talk to him.
That's actually what happened in sports.
It happens all the time. So instead of shutting people out that you disagree with, I think you should talk to them. Conversation is how you fix these things.
That's actually like a more childish manner because I actually remember in fourth standard, if we had a fight with anyone, we would go and tell the other people, hey, don't talk to him, don't talk to him. You
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
that?
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening on the internet today, all over the world. And I don't like that. I'd rather talk to you and figure out our differences and identify our common ground because everybody can relate to, can agree on some things, and you can figure out your differences and sort out your issues by talking, not by hating on each other and just shutting the person you disagree with out.
I have a statement which is, I don't know why, but it just keeps on popping in my mind. I've even asked Warren in my previous podcast before. Smiling in a Toyota or crying in a Ferrari, what would you choose? This is one of my favorite ones.
I want to say smiling in a Toyota, but in every decision I've made in my life, I've ended up crying in a Ferrari because I don't know. Maybe it's a personality thing, but I always end up crying in the Ferrari, and I'm okay with that. But I would like to be smiling in a Ferrari, but ideally smiling in a Toyota, I guess,
How
because
do you-
when I'm doing this entire engineering thing and podcast and comedy and all of that, and I see some of my friends, and I'm working on that, and I see
But
some
that's
of
in
my
the short
friends
term.
just chilling.
That's in the short
but
term. In the macro scale, you're going to win, maybe.
yeah, I guess. Hopefully, I'll win a macro scale, but that means I'd be. I might end up crying in a Ferrari, right? My friends are just chilling and having a good time and hanging out, and I know I'm not having as much fun as they are. So maybe I am ending up crying in a Ferrari when I should
But
be.
you kind of like enjoy it. You love
Oh,
your
sure, I
podcast,
do.
and then Bits is also pretty
yeah,
cool.
but more than I enjoy it, I need it. I need that challenge. I can't not have it. I would never be happy smiling in the Toyota. I know that I wouldn't be happy with it. I require
Something
to
to push
a
you
challenge.
ahead. Yeah.
It's not even about the Ferrari. It's not about the money for me. It's about the game.
The process.
Yeah, yeah. It's about almost losing but then winning.
So like your guys, Noah's getting into Comic Stand soon, maybe.
I don't want to talk
Tell us
about that
about
too
that.
much
No, we
because
just tell us about
it
it.
is. I just
How excited
registered.
are you? But just tell us.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure how that's gonna go. So let's not get too into that. But yeah, I did register. Let's see what happens. That's all
But
I'll
just
say
one
about
more
that.
thing.
Yeah.
How do you plan on clearing the first stage?
The first stage is you just send in an online video and then you see. The thing is, I even if I do get in, I won't. If I do get in, I wouldn't be able to follow through with it because I'd have to drop a year in engineering, and that's just not feasible at this point. I'm in my first year. I don't even have that much experience doing stand up yet. I mean, I'm not in a position where I.
Yeah, it
It's the
sounds
right
good,
time.
but actually
It's not the
thinking
right
about
time
it,
yet. Yeah, it's
yeah,
not the
thinking
right
about it,
time
it's
yet.
not right.
So yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah,
But how do they like reach out to you? Like you
I
did you reach
have
them
no
or
idea.
something? Or-
Someone texted me on Instagram. Someone from their team texted me asking
and
if
they're like, if
asking
you're
me to
interested.
register, asking me just to register to start.
So
I don't know. Maybe they had to meet some sort of like this many people have to register sort of thingy. I don't know what
but
it was,
maybe
but
you're actually good. You're Goa's biggest comedian, I'd say right now.
on Instagram maybe there's other people with more experience like Ashish and Warren. They done much more stand up than I have, but I guess I'm better at publicity. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But that's actually the whole game.
That's half the game. Yeah, half the game is what you actually do, and half the game is what you show the world. I guess because I do feel it's important to put
So
yourself out there in the right way.
why did you like choose engineering when you were in 12th grade? I think you started stand up and writing your own jokes.
Yeah.
So why did you choose
Why did I
engineering
choose
then?
engineering? Because I've always liked science. I
And you
like
wanted to that growth kind of like thing, maybe a challenge, that's why?
yeah for sure. I mean I just felt like that. I mean after a sixth standard I've never really known what I want to do. Like I know I wanted to be a barber at one point and a bus driver and an artist and an architect for the longest period of time. But then uh,
Did you also have actor at one point? Everyone has that, I think.
yeah, everybody has actor. But now I look at it differently. I feel like if I know exactly what I want, I'll end up there. But if I don't know, like if I just go with the flow, I could end up anywhere. And that's so exciting. That the whole idea of no limits to where you could go. That idea is exciting to me. So I just engineering was the field that gave me the most options of what to do after engineering. So that's why I decided to do engineering. And it was a challenge, and I didn't know if I would be able to do it. So it's cool that I did. Yeah.
But what was your
But
feeling?
like I have to give a big shout out to my parents and shit for that because like they've been like a constant support through all of it. Like through the engineering, they even let me do the podcast and stand up, and they've been super supportive about it. So that's cool. Like a lot of times, a lot of people don't get to follow their dreams and stuff because they're holding them back. But for the most part, my parents have been very supportive.
Were you forced into take science or it was your
No,
choice?
it was my choice. But once I chose it, my parents made sure that I committed to it. There was a lot of times where I didn't think about quitting really, but I didn't put in all the effort that I could. But at that point, they were like, "No, you need to do more." But
Because they care about you. That's how parents
no,
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure they care about me, but it was about following through. You can't just start something and not do it the right way, right? So since I had made the decision, they insisted that I went through it properly and then just like half-heartedly do it. So it was my decision fully to take engineering. They would have been fine if I took any other field. I don't want to insult any field by using it as a comparison, but they would have been fine if I took anything. But I chose to do this.
So tell us about your like when did you do your first show?
Technically, I did my first real show in sometime in June with LVC.
This year.
It was the open. Yeah, I actually started comedy this year in around June, but I mean I guess I did start with the stand up video on YouTube, but I just did two shows then. It was one at the stand up. It was like a school level stand up competition where I talked about the phone. That video is on YouTube. and the other one was when I talked about fake accents. That was at my school's annual day, and that was on YouTube. But I never did stand up after that until June. And in June, I did my first open mic with LVC at Bay 15, and that was a shit show. I bombed. The show was great, but I bombed. Okay, and it was pretty bad. It was that's probably one of the worst shows I've ever done. And we got like 150 people to that show. So like the entire thing that I'm trying to do now with my stand up is to get people to come back and watch me show them that I don't suck anymore. But I guess that's just part of the process, you know. Bombing is so I learned a lot from that. I talked about my balls and uh, dicks and ass sex a lot during that set, and I understand why it wouldn't have worked.
Were there kids
I
around?
feel there were adults around, there were no kids around, but I that was kind of I still think those jokes are funny. Like I hate that they didn't work, but and I did try them once in Manipal, then they were kind of successful, but I get why it didn't work. That it just wasn't the right vibe for it. And at that time, I wasn't experienced enough to identify that
Yeah.
and this thing. And also, I did a lot of my old material that's already on YouTube. Like I did the phone joke and the accent joke, and I'm guessing people had already seen that, so those didn't get many laughs either. So like the rule is once you put something on the internet, you can't do it anymore. So that's
Yeah,
why I
yeah.
haven't posted stuff in over a year, yeah, almost a year, and because I'm like
Because you have to repeat them. Once the
yeah,
set
so
gets
that
old, then you create a
yeah,
new set.
once
But how
that gets old,
long are these sets usually, like stand-up
I
comedy sets?
usually I mean
The ones which you perform.
I usually do 10 to 15 minutes now. Like
10 to 15.
nowadays, I do 10 to 15 minutes, but when I write for
An hour.
I test 5 minutes at a time. I create around 5 new minutes at a time, and the whole you don't do a joke once and then throw it away, right? You do it multiple times.
Yeah,
Every time you
you
do it, you add something different. You subtract something until it's the perfect bit. So right now, I'm still working on the bits that I currently have. I have about 15 minutes right now of new material, and
and you're using some of your old material.
no, I don't use anything that's on the internet.
No, not the internet one, like the ones which you perform but you've not done it before.
Oh, I don't have any of that. What I used to do is whatever I had, I just put it on the internet. Those were those two clips. But now the new stuff that I have since June, whatever I've written since June to now, I'm still working on that stuff. I still do that.
But how's your like excitement level when you did your first show at LVC with
Oh,
the
I was
open mic?
actually expecting it to go much better than it actually did, because I was so confident about like that I would do
Because your
well
first two
because
were hits.
yes, exactly. The first two times it worked for me. A lot of people talk about how they did it once and it didn't work for them, and then they still went back to do it again. For me, it worked immediately. The first time was great. The first time, like that's probably the reason I decided to do it again, because it's just such an amazing feel. The instant gratification, you do it and you get like I used to do speeches. That's why I'm fairly comfortable on stage, and but the kind of joy you get from doing a speech is not the same. Even if everybody claps at the end, you get a standing ovation. With stand up, it's just every 5 seconds, every minute you're getting gratification, and you're actually making people smile. Uh, so back to what you asked. I was expecting that show to go a lot better than it did, but I'm cool with the fact that it didn't go well now. I'm grateful that Jerwell pretty much gave me all my
Another chance
shows
for
after that.
Kalakari.
Yeah, so I'm grateful for him for giving me the chance to show them that I didn't suck anymore. Well, after that show, I went to Manipal.
Yeah,
So
for
that was the last
MIT.
show. I did that one show, and then I went to MIT Manipal for. I was there for 2 weeks before I got admission into bits. So over there's this guy Vishal. Shout out to IB Vishal if you're watching this. So he
We'll share the link with you, Vishal. We
yeah,
need you to.
so he runs the comedy. He's a third year student at MIT, and he runs the comedy scene there. Karthik Sadhvij, he started the scene, but Vishal runs it now. And they have open mics over there, but the open mics there are different. Over here, the open mics are like events.
Yeah,
Right?
like
Like
handing
they
it
put
out
out posters and people dress
on
up and
Instagram
come
and all
and all
this
of that
stuff.
sort of thing. It's not at all like that in Manipal. In Manipal, they do something called organic audience, which is there's a McDonald's and there's a McDonald's room at the side, like a party room, where people go and sit when the main room is full and to eat their food. So what they do is once a week they use they have open mic 4 times a week, but once a week they do it in McDonald's. So Vishal just takes an amplifier and a mic and sets it up in that room and starts doing stand up. Whoever's there, that's the audience. That's what their organic audience is. So you might not even know that you're going for a stand up show, but you end up at one, and that is actually a great way to practice, because when you can make strangers
So you can
laugh
also know your
just like that.
jokes about it if they're working or no.
Yeah, that's what open mics are for. That's for figuring out jokes. And those shows are free. So when I went there, I managed to do 2 of them. They have 4 open mics a week. I did one each week at McDonald's. And they usually have 8 to 10 people at those organic audience show. But I mean, I think I'm fairly good at publicity. So we managed to get 40 people at the first show and 60 at the second. And the second show was like so super packed that we just had like
Barely
four
enough space to walk.
square feet to stand on, and people were sitting on the floor and stuff like that. There's a video of it on my Instagram, and those shows were great. Those shows I really got to practice my skill and my. I just got more comfortable with doing stand up, and Vishal helped a lot. And you know he's also
Into stand-up?
yeah, he applied for Comic Con, and uh, like he's a very good friend of mine, and I always call him up for advice for this sort of thing. So yeah, so that really helped me get my scale up. And then when I came to bits, I did a few open mics there, and then I did the
In
shows.
Bismillani.
Yeah, they have open mics over there. Like there's one a month sort of. It's not that many, but I do plan on starting my own scene in bits.
We have open mics in our school, but it's
Okay.
like usually every day. So now every day, like when it's every day, people slowly stop like caring about it.
Yeah.
So initially there was like a huge audience, but then
Yeah.
slowly the audience decreased, and now they
Right.
stopped it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, the the reason the Manipal open mic is so good is because it's such a normalized thing that it's not a show anymore. So it's like they get really hard crowds every time. So it's a very good place. It's a very good environment to practice. Cool.
So Noah, tell us about the My Chekasa adventure, even though you're not. We're a bit
Okay.
interested.
So, I mean, nothing's official yet, but we're looking at starting a series of open mics in South Goa. Because, like, the North Goa scene is kind of covered.
Yeah.
Kalakari is doing a great job. LVC is also, I mean, they don't do that many anymore, but they used to do it. And but there's nothing in the South. And a lot of the people who follow our stuff from the South ask
They've
us to
been
perform.
requesting
Yeah,
it.
requesting shows. Uh, so I actually did. Majakas had put out a message asking restaurants who wanted to host to get back to us, and a lot of people actually did. So I had a few meetings. I went and I met a few people. We spoke about how arrangements would be, and it's looking like it might happen. We might do something in the first few weeks of Jan. So that would be cool. It would be very cool if that happens, and it would be creating a new platform for.
How do you plan on like rolling with it? Like,
I mean, it would see that again. It would be a challenge to balance that with the
because
engineering.
actually South Goa is like there's one place where people stay, then there's like another place which is very far away where people
Yeah,
stay.
I know.
So
So
how do you get it?
we'd probably do the shows in Margao and or Vasco. So yeah, I mean, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out where the people are and where people are willing to come, and what restaurants, understand our vision.
So where most people will go, where it'll be attractive for them.
Yeah.
You have your own podcast. Why did you decide to start it?
Well,
Like,
I love watching podcasts. I listen to and watch a lot of podcasts. I actually haven't. I listened to them on
wait,
Spotify.
one second. Who? Name a few.
Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the podcast that I watch most often. That's the first one that I found. I can talk about how I found podcasts. I watched Joe Rogan. I watched The Fighter and the Kid. That's a comedy podcast with Brian Callen and Brendan Schaub. I watch. I watched Tiger Belly. I watch. This past weekend, I listened to Congratulations. I listened
So are these
to
like funny ones or
the
serious?
Fighter and the Sting. The Fighter and the Sting. I think. With the these are most of the podcasts that I watch. Pretty much all the podcasts that I watch are by comedians, but they're not all comedy podcasts. Joe Rogan is not a comedy podcast.
Yeah, I know about Joe
Joe Rogan
Rogan.
is a comedian, but it's absolutely not a comedy podcast. I actually found that through. I'm a huge Elon Musk fan. I've been following Elon Musk ever since that video of him unloading the McLaren P1 from
Did you see the new Cybertruck?
Yeah, of course I did, dude. But anyway, so like I've been following him for a long time, and I've read the book. There's a book by Ashley Vance.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good book, and it gives you an insight into his life. But and then the thing happened with he smoked the pot on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I've not.
But
I think
it was a pretty big deal. It broke the internet. It's a big meme now. So he smoked pot on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then the Tesla stock prices tanked. They went up again to higher than they'd ever been. But I'm a huge Elon Musk fan, and for the first time in my life, I was triggered by something because I don't let things offend me, and especially not this kind of internet bullshit. But so I watched the podcast thinking I'd hate on Joe Rogan and like dislike it before I'd even seen it, but it
Once
was
you saw it, then you
amazing.
realized.
It was like I've seen all the Elon Musk. At least at that point, I had seen all the Elon Musk content that there was. I had read the book, but I don't think I understood him until I watched that podcast. That podcast gave me more of an insight into how he actually thought than anything I'd ever seen before. Because the entire concept of podcast is just having
Having a
conversations
conversation.
with people. Yeah, and Joe Rogan does it so well. He does it so well. It's his podcast changed my life. It changed the way I see things. So many things. It changed my opinion on so many things. It just he sits down with these people. He sits down with these experts and he just talks to them. I find that the best way to learn. Like if I want to learn about something, I just look up to see if Joe Rogan has ever talked to an expert about it. Because reading something as opposed to watching someone who's extremely passionate about it talk about it, it's a completely different thing.
So that's what made you start.
That's
a
what made me
podcast?
start watching podcasts, and I knew what that did for me, like how it affected me, and I love the idea that someone might watch the podcast that I do and
And
be
see what
inspired
it-
with them, and
Also,
someone
it
who's
helps you
interested in
learning,
something.
right? Whatever your guest is.
I'll get back to that. So anyway, so that's how I got into podcasts in general, and I just feel like it's a great medium because it's so natural. Like all this Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, all of that. It's I mean I don't know about Jimmy Kimmel, but most of these talk shows. They plan what they're going to talk about in advance. It's just like a funny bit, 5 minutes this time. But a podcast, like you really get to understand what that person is talking
There's no
about.
planning of it.
Yeah,
before
exactly.
that.
It's just so natural. It's just a conversation. It's so organic. It's such a great platform. So it's just such a great format. So I just loved it. And then I watched podcasts for a long time, and like I knew why I wanted to start something. I didn't have any clear idea of what I wanted to do or when I wanted to start it, but VIT Vellore Institute of Technology. I had gone for counseling over there, and they made me wait from like 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. I was waiting in line, and I was so bored by the end of it. Like it was just me and my dad, and there was no. It was so hot. Like Chennai is really really hot, and Sumayaki was just starting to pop. Then he had released the trailer for White Tea, I think. And on a whim, like I'd been waiting for like 6-7 hours, and I was just so tired. He was just about to have this show at Sync. It was one of his first shows, I think. At sorry, Showbar. So I texted him and I told him that hey, I'm starting a podcast.
You have his
on-
number or like on Instagram?
no, on Instagram. I DM'd him on Instagram. He had like 1,200 followers at that time, and I had like 700 followers. And so I texted him and told him, "Hey, I plan on starting this, and I want you to be my first guest because I think what you're doing is cool, and I think more people need to find out about it." And he was like, "Hey, cool, man, let's do it." And we talked about it a bit. He put me on the guest list for his show. We met at the show, and then yeah, then it just happened. And I didn't have any equipment, obviously, so I reached out to my friends who were videographers and any of my friends who were photography enthusiasts.
Did you
And
pay them?
No, I did not pay anyone.
So
I don't think you like. I just got them to believe in my vision, like our vision, because I feel like I let it be a team effort, and if they have suggestions, we incorporate those into what we
so you
do.
work together.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a me thing. It's an us thing. And like the first episode was me, Sarvesh Lad, Amol Vani, and 2JM, Jaden Montserrat. So I didn't have mics. So I borrowed. I didn't think I would need them, but then I talked to a friend and he was like, "Bro, what are you doing? Like, you have to use mics." So I reached out to Jaden because I knew he had a mic and we had gone to school together. He was a senior. So he said, "Sure, but I want to be a part of it. I want to come and see what you're doing." So I was like, "Great, I'd love for you to be a part of it." So then he came on and I borrowed the same mic that someone else had, and we got the camera guys to come in, Sarvesh and Amol, and it just happened. Like we just talked about it a bit. We decided more or less what we wanted it to be, and then it happened. We got people to comment it, and now Sumayuki is doing great. Now he's got like
4,000 or 5,000, I
5,000
think.
followers, I think. And since then, even my platform has grown. Like I'm at 2,000
Yeah, so
something
that
now.
kind of like
from
helped you,
700.
would you say? That podcast with him?
For sure, man. It was pretty much goals. I don't know if it was the first for sure, but like I don't think there's much else. It's definitely the biggest now. So it was something new. People were excited about it, and it was at that point it was proof of concept of the format.
You got like 10 or 12K views? How
It has 10,000 views right now, which is pretty cool. Every time he releases something, the views shoot up. So that's cool. And then the next episode, like I reached out to a few people after that who didn't want to do the podcast. Like it didn't want to do it, but then we reached out to Maicha Kazar eventually, and they wanted to do it, and that happened. That was great. Those guys are doing some pretty cool shit. And also there was some controversial things that, like some things that other people didn't agree with about what they were doing, and we addressed those things. So we talked about it to sort out our differences, and those guys are they were very cool. They were very friendly. They were very open about what they do. It was fun. It was a pretty cool experience. I just love the idea that I'd be able to talk to these people and learn from them and collaborate with them. Maybe it's just about uh, it's just about art and
have you like
figuring out how people who are doing cool things do what they do. What makes them tick? How what their
what
process
makes
is
them
like.
different from the others?
Yeah,
Their thing.
identifying what makes them different, and maybe even inspiring people within who want to do something like what they are doing. I'm basically creating a platform for to talk about art, talk about what they do, talk about their process.
Have you like ever faced any problems in your podcast, like getting people on or
Yeah,
something?
sure.
Anything?
The second person I tried to call after we did the Sumayuki show, like the first person I called after that was I tried to reach out to Mandar, the football player, and he was going for some training camp at that time, and I don't think he understood what I was pitching to him, so he said no, and then I texted him on WhatsApp and I showed him what we had done so far, and he didn't get back to me. He didn't pick my calls after that, but that was chill. After, we got a roll on after that, and we did pretty well, so that was fun. Yeah, hopefully, he will be on the podcast eventually, and we'll make that work. But, yeah.
So any other problems? Like I
Oh
think
right,
one of your
like
Maicha Kazak podcast.
every time we did it, there have been issues. Like the first time, I didn't know how to edit video that well, so that was a huge challenge. I spent like 20, 30 plus hours editing the Sumayuki podcast because it was two cameras, and it was the first time I was working with overlaying. I was working with this kind of shitty software called VideoPad. It's great for doing small things, but it was a long format, and VideoPad is not very good at that. And I didn't know how to use Premiere Pro at the time. Premiere Pro is like the industry standard. So that was like just so tedious and so hard to do. But eventually I made that worked. And then the second one with the Majithia podcast, we used three mics, and two of them recorded at 1x speed and one of them recorded at 0.9996 speed. And that's fine over a few seconds, but when you record something
On the long
over
side.
hours, you can clearly see the difference. Like there's a very clear lag. So troubleshooting that was a big issue. We like first identifying why it was not sounding right, because I didn't realize that it was 0.99 this thing. I wrote down, like, me and my roommate were sitting in our room doing the math, figuring out how much slow it is and how to fix that. Then I started using Premiere Pro, and that significantly simplifies the process. Also, I don't live here anymore. Like I don't live at
You
home
live in
anymore. I
Bits
live in
now.
Bits. I live in Basco. So getting the content from the videographers was a challenge because Siddhant's data to transfer it to me. We tried to do it over the internet, but it was just very heavy. The files were too heavy, so it took a long time for us to
You had
release
to
the
like
podcast.
physical
It took-
files you allowed to change in a pen drive or something?
yeah, because he left early, so like we had to switch cameras halfway through a little more than halfway through the shoot. So, like just getting there's always so many complications, but eventually you just have to like figure out how to make it work. That's part of the challenge. It's part of the fun of it. Just like troubleshooting, figuring out how to.
How was Azim's show for you? Like
Oh,
what was
Azim
it
show was
about?
great. He was such a cool. He was so cool. He was so nice to talk to. He gave me advice, and he was very encouraging, and he was great. He killed, and it was a great experience. That was probably one of my best shows. It was very, the crowd was great, and it was like my coming back. That was the first show I did in Goa technically outside of bits after the first show, the
After
LVC
the-
show,
the
the
open
LVC
mic,
show
yeah.
that bombed. No. I did another one after that with LVC, and that one wasn't as bad. That was pretty fine. But this was the first good show that I had done, and I got more opportunities after that because that show went well. So big shout out to whoever, like Ashish and Jerwell gave me that show. Ashish saw me perform at Waves. Waves is the Bits Cultural Festival, and he was a judge for the stand up competition. So he saw me perform and he thought that
You
I
could.
had grown or whatever. That was like major shout out to those guys just for giving me a chance to.
So, guys, thank you for watching it. You want to tell them to subscribe? They'll listen to
Yeah,
it.
subscribe to Ayush's channel and subscribe to my channel. It's Noah Martins.
Yeah, I'll be
If you
linking Noah's channel below and his Instagram handle.
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. It's Noah from Goa, and come for shows. When are you going to release this?
I don't know.
Okay, if just in case he releases it before the 29th of December, I have shows on the 20th and the 29th of December. I'm opening for Danny Fernandez on the 29th, I think. And just follow me on Instagram. You'll see when I'm doing shows. Come for a show. It's a whole lot of fun, and yeah, just follow him. Follow him on Instagram. Follow this thing. It's great that he's doing something different. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. And also, Vaishnav, hopefully, Vaishnav will be able to complete it. It depends on Vaishnav. I'll
Shout
be
out to
linking
Vaishnav.
Vaishnav also. Shout out to Vaishnav. I'll be linking his handles also. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks, man.
Oh, wait. That was.